Hey guys, it's Brandon. Today we're going to go through a couple shots that I took and show you how I take one exposure, then flip the CPL and take another exposure. So you can see on this first one, I have it so it's taking the glare off the front hood of the car, the windshield of the car, and on the second one, it's taking the glare out of the whole side of the car. So it really deepens the blackness and it really accents the body lines. So we're going to take them into Photoshop after we edit them and mask off parts of one picture so that basically the entire car looks like it has a CPL on it, but it doesn't. Okay, let's go ahead and jump into Lightroom and start editing these pictures. I like to edit them first so that when I get them into Photoshop, combine them together, and get them back into Lightroom, the main edits are done. And then we can do finishing touches at the end. That way we're editing the full raw files here. So what I'm also going to do is just edit one of the pictures and then copy that edit onto the other one. I use a tripod so the exposures are almost identical. So any edit that I do to one is going to transfer over to the other one, no problem. That way we don't have to edit both of the pictures. So the first thing we're going to do is jump down here to the camera calibration settings. These are mostly used to calibrate the colors of your camera, but I use them to quickly adjust some overall colors of my picture. So you can see here by moving this slider, it kind of changes the hue of the greens in the picture, makes them more yellow. I'm going to go ahead and set this here. How about here? Give it a little bit bump there. Okay. Now we're going to add the vignette. And for this one, I'm going to do probably -20. And then roundness and feather all the way up. Okay, next I'm going to enable profile corrections. What this is going to do is see the lens you're using, the focal length, and it's going to take the warp out of the picture. So if you see, it flattens it out just a little bit. You can see the change here when I enable it. It's important that we do this here now, because if we don't, and we go up and start editing all this up here, the highlights, shadows, whites, blacks, what this tends to do is make the picture brighter. So we don't want to do this last, because if we get all that stuff set right and our exposure's right and then we enable that, most of the time it's going to brighten your picture and then you'll have to go readjust your stuff. So it's just good to get it out of the way right away. The next thing we're going to do is noise reduction. This is also shot at ISO 100 on a tripod, so the noise is not very much. But I'm going to go ahead and set it to 25. It'll smooth it out just a little bit. And sharpening is okay at 40. For the split toning, for this picture, I'm probably not going to do too much of it here. Maybe like a 10 with maybe like a 5 saturation on the shadows. And it's going to give it just a little bit of a red tint to all the shadows here. Nothing too crazy. One thing I like to do with car pictures is to take the aquas down. So if you look here in your windshield, most of the time, if you don't have it tinted, you're going to have an aqua kind of a tint to the windshield. I'm not a huge fan of that. So here's a quick tip: if you drop your aqua saturation down, it takes away that kind of blue tint that's on your windshield. So I'm going to go ahead and drop the aquas, drop the greens just a tad, and then I usually change my greens a little bit more yellow. So I'm just going to drop this down just a hair, make those greens just a little bit more yellow, and pop this up just a little bit here. Okay, now we have the hue and saturation done. We're going to jump up to the tone curve. So I have already a preset for this STI. It's not a huge curve at all, and we can toggle it on and off here, and you can see kind of the differences. Kind of just bumps the shadows just a little bit and raises those blacks just a little bit as well. And now we can get up here into the basic part of Lightroom and edit our exposure, highlights, shadows, whites, and blacks. Most of the time when I do automotive photography, these numbers are pretty close to the same. I usually go between 20 and 40 on the clarity. I usually start at 40, bump it down if I need to. Dehaze, I love this tool. I'm going to set it at 20 here. It darkens your picture, but it takes a lot of the haze. If you see here, it kind of cuts through the haze. If there's like any kind of fog, or if it's raining or about to rain, it kind of cuts through that. So I'm going to go ahead and leave that set at 20. I'm going to bump the vibrance just a hair to about 10. And then our blacks we can bump down just a little bit, maybe about -15. Yeah, let's go 13. Our whites, we can bump those up just a little bit, lighten up the picture. Shadows, I always raise my shadows and take the highlights down. This is just personal preference. So I'm going to take the shadows up probably maybe around 60, and then I'm going to dump the highlights probably about the same. So around 60 or so. So the overall exposure is a little bit dark. I'm going to go ahead and bump that maybe a 0.2 of a stop. And then our white balance here, a lot of the time I grab white balance off the ground. Let's go ahead and manually set that right in the middle of all those. So here's this now. Here's the before and after. We'll go ahead and crop it. Because if you hit crop and you have this little angle button here, you can grab it and run it across the horizon line. And it'll automatically put your picture flat with the horizon line. So in this case, I'm going to go off the stairs. I have a little bit less space than over here, so I'm going to actually grab this and drag it in a little bit. That way we have a pretty symmetrical picture here. So this is already looking pretty good. The next thing I'm going to do is go ahead and start editing separate pieces of this image. So I'm going to go ahead and focus on the ground, then move up to the car, and then maybe a little bit in the sky. Even though there's not too much going on in the sky, we might add a little bit of blue color there or something. So I'm going to go ahead and grab this brush tool here. I already have this preset here for some ground settings that I like. You can check them out here. And if I just brush over the ground, it's just going to make it a little bit more, a little darker. It's not going to take too much of the saturation out, which I might change in a second. But if I hit O on the keyboard, we can see those areas that it's masking off. And we can go ahead and get in here. We don't have to be super perfect with this. So if we go here and hit Alt on the keyboard, we can go ahead and brush away the places that we don't want the mask to be. Just a little quick shortcut, instead of having to come over here and hit erase, then coming back, erasing what you don't want, and then coming back and hitting your other brush. Alt on the keyboard gives you a way to switch between those two really fast. So now that I have this set right here, I'm going to make a couple adjustments to the ground. I'm going to make it a little bit lighter. I'm going to take my exposure back to 0. Maybe bump the shadows just a hair. Take the blacks down. And maybe drop the saturation on it just a touch. So the colors on the building are a little bit yellow for me. What I think I might do there is just go ahead and go down here to the saturation. And this little tool here, to the left of the hue, to the left of the saturation, if you click on that tool, come over here, click on any color you want in the picture. So say I wanted the saturation of them to go down. You can click on the color, drag down with your mouse, and you can see the yellow comes right out. So you can't see me moving my mouse, but all I did was click on the color, drag my mouse down, color comes out, drag my mouse up, color comes back in. So I'm just going to, let me go ahead and reset this yellow, and I'm going to just grab some of this color down here and just desaturate that just a little bit there. So now we can see there, before and after. Alright, now that we have the ground done, the background done, I'm going to go ahead and grab another brush and go over the car just a little bit. So this brush is not going to be anything too crazy. It's just going to add a little bit of black to the car, darken it just a hair, and then desaturate it just a touch to get that real dark black out of it, and then possibly the shadows down just a little bit. Okay, now that we have the car brush put on, we have the saturation down a little bit, the blacks down, and the shadows down. Kind of darkens up that car a little bit. We can see it before and after. The next little thing I like to do is go ahead and take some of the saturation out and blacken up the tires. What this is going to do, the settings for this is really, I just drop the saturation just a little bit. Sometimes just a black, just a touch. I don't like to do too much of it. The last thing I want to do is grab a gradient tool and drag a gradient from the bottom coming up and reset this and just drop the exposure maybe 0.75, and it's going to kind of darken up the ground just a little bit there. Then I can come over here and hit brush, hit O on the keyboard, and brush away that darkness from the car here. Hit Alt, brush away some of the darkness that came from that filter onto the car, because I really just want to darken the ground. I don't want to darken any of the car. I'll grab another radial filter here, invert it, and set the feather to 100. Double click effect and it resets the entire thing. And just add a little bit of exposure so it kind of has more of like a sun feel coming in. So you have brightness from the left hand side of the screen coming in, and then add just a small yellow tint to that. Now that we have this picture edited, we can see the before and the after. What I want to do is go ahead and copy that edit over to this next picture. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and click this one, hold down Shift, click the next picture, and click on the sync button down here at the bottom right. So I want to make sure that everything transfers over. All the crop I did, not transform. I want to do the crop the same way. I want to do all the local adjustments, all the brushes, all the exposure. I want everything to transfer over. So once I collect everything that I want, hit synchronize. Okay, now that we have both of the edits transferred to both the pictures, we're going to go ahead and select both the pictures, right click, and go ahead and edit them, open as layers in Photoshop. Alright, both pictures have loaded into Photoshop. You can see both of them here. First thing we're going to do is highlight both of them over here in the layers panel. Jump up here to edit, auto align layers, and this is going to make sure that both of the pictures line up exactly right. I was using a tripod, so it was pretty close, but you can see it was a little bit off. So this just makes sure that every single piece is lined up exactly. Now see, turning this on and off, you can see the difference in the picture in one exposure to the next. This exposure, the top one, takes the glare off of the windshield and the front of the car, as well as the ground and the wheels. So those are the pieces that we're going to use off of that exposure. Now if I hide this one, you can see in this exposure the CPL filter has taken the glare off the side of the car, some of the windows in the back on the building, and some of the building itself. So now we have determined what pieces we're going to be using from each image. We can go ahead and line them up over here. I'm going to go ahead and put this image on top because this is an image we're going to be using the whole side of the car and the building in the back from this image. So what I'm going to do here is go ahead and add a mask to each of these layers. Okay, now we have both of the pictures aligned, and we have created a mask on both of them. We can go ahead and start masking off the top image so that we can reveal the image that's underneath it. So what we're going to do is go ahead and click on the mask over here on the top image, select the brush tool, which is B. If you hit X and D, you change your foreground and background color to black and white. That's going to enable us to remove this. If it's black, it removes. If it's white, then it adds. So this is a non-destructive way of editing your picture here. So what we're going to do is from this picture, we want the side of the car, the back building, and that's just about it. And the windows. So what we want to do is select the mask, hit B, scale down just a little bit, and go ahead, make sure your foreground color is black, and just go ahead and start brushing away the pieces of the car that we don't want. So as we brush them away, you can see it's taking off, it's masking out this, and essentially using this bottom picture in place of this top picture and the areas that we're masking off. So here we can go in here, if you hit the backslash on your keyboard, you can see the area that you have masked. I'll grab this. Make this a big one here. That way it fades into the bumper or the fender there nicely. And then we can go back afterwards and just remove this from back here. Okay. So the bumper I'm going to use from the second picture as well. So I'm going to go ahead and take this, brush around here. Okay. And then also from the second picture, I'm going to use the ground. So I'm going to go ahead and continue brushing the entire ground. And also the wheels. All right. Now that we have those brushed out, we can see this is everything that we're using from this top image. And now that we have brushed that out and masked that over, we can see there. We kind of combine it all together into one nice picture. So that's really all there is to it. So now to save and go back into Lightroom, you can just hit Command S or File Save, and it will automatically save it here, but also automatically transfer it back into Lightroom for you. Okay, we're back here in Lightroom, and you can see it's added a third picture here. So this first one is going to be one of the ones that we use. This third one is going to be the second one we used. And this third one here in the middle is going to be them combined together and parts and pieces taken from each one and made one good image. So if we look at that now, we got the ground from one, the background from one, and then the hood and the windshield from the other. The only thing left to do here is add just a couple finishing touches. I'm going to add maybe a little bit of color coming in on this side, maybe add a blue in the sky, not too much, just a little bit of a blue color coming in this side. And then on this side, add one more radial filter and just add a little bit more of exposure coming in. Maybe make that radial filter just a little bit bigger so that exposure comes out and hits on the back of the car. And actually, from doing that, I'm actually not going to have blue on this side. Grab this and bring the yellow down just a hair. So I'm going to see a little before and after. And I would say we're just about done here. So we can go from this before go ahead and reset the settings here. We can see this is the image we started with, edit them both together, and this is the image we finished with. So hopefully you guys were able to learn something from here, maybe doing something a little bit different than what you normally do, or maybe if you've never done this before, it'll encourage you to go out and try to take some pictures that are the CPLs flipped on one of them, so that you get this cool effect that you can do in post, and get the entire car to be nice and clean instead of having the glare on one side of the car and not on the entire thing. So you get a cool effect out of it. It's a little bit more work than just putting into Lightroom and editing it and exporting it, but the final product is always pretty cool. So if you have any questions, let me know. I'll be happy to answer them.